We're gonna get into all of that, especially by reviewing Gabriel Rockhill's article after we debate this person in show Q, because frankly, we can't keep them waiting for hours. Hello. This person in show Q, because
Hello?
frankly, we can't keep them waiting for hours. Can you shut the stream off?
Hello?
Yes, I hear you.
Yeah. Hello.
Shut the stream off.
Base.
It is off.
Write down a super chat
Then why am I
questions on
echoing in
paper
your
and
mic?
address them after the roll call.
Oh.
TBH.
I don't think are you?
I was.
Okay. Well, is it fixed now?
Yes, it's fine now. So what is it?
Okay. What is it? Well, I mean, a lot of people told me to debate you on this server after I caused quite the ruckus in VC earlier. Let's just lay out a few things. You are a Marxist-Leninist, right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. I have a few gripes about specifically Marxist-Leninism. A lot of it comes from a different view than what Marxists hold specifically property to be, as well as community, and a kind of functioning, working economy. Let's start with economy, because that's something I know quite a bit about. I think it's pretty clear the failure of planned economics is demonstrated throughout history, especially when you look at any actually existing socialist state. It has a sort of big distribution.
So this is going to be a debate, right?
Hmm?
This is going to be a debate. You're not going to be here and give a lecture for 2 hours.
That's fine. That's fine.
And then wait for me to respond. So you just said something right now that it's pretty clear the failures of planned economy. They're not clear to me. So if you want to imply that it's pretty clear, you should actually qualify what you mean by that.
Okay, sure. Let me instead demonstrate how it would be. Okay, let's say you want to build a railroad in a socialist.
Why do you need to talk about how it would be when there are actual examples of planned economy in history?
Oh, because empirical observation doesn't really show us much to truth, and there's lots of factors that can we can gripe about all day.
But there were actual planned economies in history, the Soviet Union being one of them, that were immensely successful as far as their formative goals were concerned, including China.
They had to implement a market economy to be able to function.
Are you referring to the new economic policy?
Let's start at the very beginning. You know, war communism, how it led to multiple distribution problems, and it led to a lot of...
Communism was not a planned economy. It was a policy of expropriation, state-mandated expropriation. It wasn't actually a planned economy because there were no ruling and governing institutions of planning the economy. The economy was still in the hands of petty producers whose produce was simply expropriated at the barrel of a gun by the military. So that was not a planned economy. That was an emergency policy that no one envisioned represented what long-term planned economics would look like.
But again, it failed, and it led to a lot of people joining the Black Army, especially in the Ukrainian regions.
No, it didn't.
No, this is demonstrated. You can look at the history books like about Makhno and such, and what he did is he went to these people that the Reds were calling kulaks, and he said he let them keep an equal share like everyone else, and operate within the free territory in Ukraine. That's what it drove them to join that, because it actually...
Makhno did not acquire the significance he did in contradistinction to the rule of the Bolsheviks, because Makhno came to power independently of any grip of power by the Bolsheviks in that region. Makhno took advantage of a power vacuum, the absence of any organized power whatsoever, operated like a petty criminal bandit, with whom the Bolsheviks actually did work with for a period of time, until they treated him as the bandit he was and drove him out.
How was he a bandit?
Because his so-called anarchist economy relied on the raiding of Bolshevik supply lines and trains.
The Bolsheviks were posing a threat.
By transporting the goods from their supply lines, the bandits of the Makhnovite bandits were stealing from the Bolsheviks, raiding their supply lines, and their entire economy was simply based on expropriation.
It wasn't based on expropriation like the
Yes,
Reds.
it
The
was.
Reds were
And in
blatant.
addition, they were criminal terrorists ruling over the peasants with their own kontrasvedka that acted as a
They didn't
secret
rule
police.
over anyone. They
Yes,
were
they
anarchists.
did. They indeed did, though, because
How-
they had an economy that was like war communism, based in expropriation, except they had no basis in legitimacy in the actual peasants. Thank you so
They
much.
had
Jennifer.
they had a market socialist economy. They even had schools. They had working hospitals, and they thrived while the war was going on.
No,
in
they
that
didn't.
small
All of
territory.
those schools and all of those hospitals were a remnant from the state of affairs that preceded the Makhnovists. They didn't create any
They-
new institutions at all.
So they didn't create any capital, but they seized the capital and made it operate in a thriving manner that was not seen before.
Give me evidence that it operated in a thriving manner. Relative to what?
Relative to
I'm
what
going
the
to go ahead and
nationalists were
guess
doing.
that all of the evidence you're going to give me that it was thriving was anecdotal evidence from ideological anarchists from the region who want to give glamorous reports and results for their ideological agenda. What objective evidence is there that this was a thriving state?
Do you want like history books here? Because I can
I
give you
want
sources.
some actual objective evidence that shows that the economy and these institutions were thriving.
With like okay, so I can give you a history book, two of them that account this.
I'm not asking you for an authority. I'm asking you to oblige an actual standard of evidence and then fulfill that piece of evidence.
So let's take the example of what the nationalists were doing at the time, right? So you should know that the nationalist economy in Ukraine was very awful and
I
hurt
don't
a
know
lot
why
of-
you're talking about an economy in a state of chaotic civil war. I mean, why are you making it seem like this was a period of ripe experimentation of different systems, like some kind of Silicon Valley commune, some seasteading fucking commune somewhere? This was
Okay,
a
we can-
chaotic, tumultuous state of the breakdown of society. There was no economic system at all. A system implies a self-enclosed and functioning kind of process. That did not exist. There was no consistent systemic process of any kind of economy. There was the tumultuous chaos of a civil war. There was no nationalist
if you want to
economy.
move on to the stable example of like the established Soviet Union, we can. Which also had its own problems.
Sure, it had its own problems, but the purpose of the planned economy of the Soviet Union was to build up a national economy whose steel production and production of heavy industry goods could rival that of the West to protect it in the circumstances of an invasion, as well as provide for their citizens a basic standard of living. And in doing that, it succeeded with flying colors. You can talk about the problems.
If I'm not wrong, I think the steel production was had a big issue of overproduction.
That's overproduction of steel is the least of a country's worries, which is being invaded by the vastly more industrialized Germans. I mean, you're talking.
Well,
about
I mean, that was near
13,000 tanks. I mean, that's what you need to win a war. Life or death. Stalin said in 31 or 28, we need 10 years to catch up. And if we don't, we're going to be buried. 10 years passed, Operation Barbarossa commences. The Soviet Union ends that war victorious. I say that's an example of success, not failure.
Okay, wait. So the war ends, but they that caused a because of the war, it did cause a lot of shortages in a lot of other sectors of the economy.
I mean, yeah, because 30 million people lost their lives. I mean, tens of millions at least are exterminated outright at the barrel of a gun. Countless soldiers are casualties. Countless capital and industry is physically destroyed. The entire brunt of the Nazi war machine is almost entirely taken by the Soviet Union. And you're trying to present that as some kind of systemic or worse ideological flaw on part of the leaders of the Soviet Union and not the objective fact.
Who brought up that specific war.
Yeah, but they survived is the point, and that's what they were doing. That's what the whole purpose of it was for.
Well, what's survival if you're like using way too much resources to fight a war and then leaving your people starving and
Hold on.
like
What
shivering.
survival? What survival when you don't end up being the slaves of the Germans and being exterminated as subhuman Slavs and having all of your resources looted to go to Germany? I wonder
Is
what
being the
survival
slave
that
of the
implies.
Soviets
I mean, you're
better?
trying to say that there was no Soviet victory. Why? Because they had a transient, very temporary famine in 47-48. So because of the famine in 47-48, the entirety of the Soviet victory in World War II is now non-existent, and it would have made no difference if the Nazis would have won. That is so abjectly fucking stupid. The countless and innumerable people within the Soviet state who had their livelihood elevated, and by the way, the rebuilding was very, very quick and very rapid in the years after World War II. These people had access to electricity, education, running water, medicine. They could read for the first time when they had no ability to before. They were having basic access to culture. They had a job that was secure. They could at least live. Yeah, there were famines in 32-33 and 47-48. Those famines were real. But then again, famines were a very common occurrence in the Russian Empire. And then after the famine of 47, which was actually because of the war for no other reason, they never had one again. That sounds like a victory to me.
Do you know what worked better? And it just going from feudalism, which people were dirt poor and having nothing, it's not that hard to elevate lives after that.
Yes, it is! Because most countries still can't fucking do it. That's what you're missing. Most countries in Africa, many countries in the Middle East today, many countries even in...
That's because of American imperialism.
Sure,
which,
No, it's not just because of American imperialism. It's because they have no ability to develop themselves, because actually it's not easy to modernize your productive forces. It's not easy to fucking do that. No, what you're saying is that it's easy to go from feudalism to something better. No, it's not.
Hold on.
If Russia never had communism, or whatever you want to call it, if they never had that, and they were just some extremely starving nation comparable to Africa's standard of living, Angelina Jolie would be going there and adopting orphans from there, and Russia would be the sad, oh, what a tragedy. Nobody actually wants to acknowledge the achievement of the Soviet state and the achievement of
Do you know what
Stalinism.
achievement was greater, which is somehow overshadowed by these like MLs who like praise the USSR for that? Yugoslavia did it much faster, much better, and increased the livelihood.
Yugoslavia, no, it did not. Yugoslavia was already part of the industrializing Austro-Hungarian Empire for the most part. When that was dissolved in World War I,
Yugoslavia was for people's economic situations were actually stable, and they had a better standard of living than USSR.
Most states to the west of the USSR had a better standard of living than the USSR. You want to know why?
Why is that?
Because they had greater access to the capital and light industry consumer goods that already existed in the West. That's why. It wasn't because they built a better system from the ground up. It's the opposite. They had more access to the established capitalist world market than the Soviets did. That's why. Life was better in Hungary, it was better in Poland, it was better in East Germany, it was better in Czechoslovakia than it was in the Soviet Union. Everyone knows that.
So, what you're saying is that because the Soviet Union refused global trade cooperation for a very long time,
no.
But they did do that. They refused.
No, they didn't. They didn't refuse global trade cooperation.
They only traded with other socialist states.
That's not true. That's just patently not true. It was Western countries that wanted to restrict trade to the Soviet Union, not the reverse.
Why couldn't USSR take the Yugoslavia approach and have instead of being a blatant strongman military Ooga Booga force, why can't they
what the fuck is
why
that?
Can't they take
I guess the Oriental orcs Ooga Booga, right? Because they're apes, just straight out of Hitler's fucking mouth, right? Yeah, I will not have you disrespect the heroic and legendary Red Army here. You're gonna call them
the
Ooga
Red
Booga.
Army. The Red Army.
The soldiers of the Red Army were far more
The soldiers
classy,
of the Red
far
Army
more
raped
civilized,
people.
far more
They
civilized,
raped
far
people.
more
They literally
acculturated,
raped
far more
people.
educated. Even the German officers would note the level of literary education, the level of literacy, the level of acquaintance with basic intellectual concepts among these soldiers of the Red Army. And you sit here
Wait,
and
hold on.
disrespect them as half-human apes.
Being forced to read like a
Being
fucking
forced
commie
to
books,
read?
right?
What?
All right, being told a bunch of shit from commie books and being able to parrot it isn't intelligence or literacy.
No,
it's
because that's not
brainwashing.
what they did. People consumed books and read and thought for themselves in the Soviet Union far more than in any Western country, as far as the average person was concerned. People were able to critically dissect their propaganda. They didn't see that as some intellectually contrived or theoretical statement. They saw it as an official statement of their objectively existing state. So they weren't blindly agreeing with it on the basis of some contrived theoretical level, like they couldn't think for themselves. They were saying, this is the authority of our state, and they respected that because it was their state.
That's the thing. The Red Army quite clearly did a bunch of horrid actions to a lot of people. First of all, what about the gulags? What about that? Have you ever read the Gulag Archipelago?
I wiped my ass with it, yeah. Because it's shit with no bait. There's no evidence to that fucking book. It's an anecdotal account. It's an anecdotal account based in nothingness, based in bullshit. You can't morally hold the Soviet Union accountable for not being as wealthy and rich to support a great standard of living in its fucking penal colonies. But the Soviet Union... I
can absolutely criticize it for literally fucking starving and torturing people in its penal system.
There was no intentional starvation of anyone at any period in the Soviet Union's history. When there was shortages of food...
Oh, really?
Yeah, because when there's shortages of food...
What about the Holodomor?
Let me get this straight. You're claiming that the Soviets intentionally orchestrated a famine in Ukraine.
Yes.
So you're telling me you're mentally retarded?
I'm telling you, there's evidence. There's multiple different.
Show me one piece of evidence for this stupid fucking idea that a famine in which Russians and Kazakhs also starved was intentional. In what meaningful world does it make rational sense that the Soviet state wants to just starve people and not produce enough food?
So I have over 200 references.
I don't care about your See, here's the thing. You're probably college educated, right? So you're mentally retarded and you have this idea that a simple allusion to a reference, as if this is some kind of game of credentials, somehow suffices to actually prove and fulfill a standard of evidence. I want a primary standard of evidence I want one to be fulfilled by your own account that this was actually intentional. I don't want you to allude to 200 references. I want you to take any one of those references and rationally legitimize them. But in your own words and in your own process, I want you to do that. Because I don't give a fuck about Western universities. I will go in those universities with my ball sack hanging and I will wipe every professor's face with my balls. I don't care about your fucking references. I shit on your professors and your accredited historians and I spit on their fucking face.
So you're saying that because I have sources, right?
No,
I just told you what you have to do. Take one of those sources and break down to me a standard of evidence and how that source fulfills that standard of evidence. That's what I asked you to do. I didn't ask you to give more commentary about your sources. I asked you to actually demonstrate their significance rationally yourself and in your own words.
Okay. That's fair enough. All right, so we have a book called Cannibals Identified During the Holodomor Were Given Poison Baits by Medical Workers Around the Villages. It's a Russian document. It's not a book. I said book. Sorry. I have the web archive, and it directly accounts that there was specific tampering with not only the food in Ukraine, but also the supply lines to get food there. And there's accounts of people. Right?
Can you give me the actual objective evidence?
I have an article right here. Do you want that?
No, I want you to fulfill a standard of evidence. Eyewitness testimony does not fulfill a standard of evidence to me. I will call that a...
But it's multiple different accounts, and that would just mean that
Sure, there are multiple different people in Ukraine who had the agenda of slandering and smearing the USSR, and there are multiple people in the West who have that agenda. That much is very clear to me.
So you're saying we don't trust the vast.
Can you provide for me from the Soviet archives a single document from the Soviet government that explains that this is our plan and our intention to execute a famine?
Okay, 1 second. All right, so we have a letter from Molotov to Stalin. We have a letter to Stalin from Kanovich.
Can you read us the contents of these letters?
Let me see if this is the right one.
Read us the content of these letters and verify the source.
There's the PDF for the document, and let me read this out. Given the most serious attention in Ukraine, Chubar's corruptness and opportunities in essence, and rotten diplomacy with regard to the CC of the VKP and criminally frivolous attitude towards his job will eventually ruin the Ukraine. These comrades are not up to the challenge of leading Ukraine today. If you go to a Ukrainian conference, and I insist on it, take every measure in order to improve the function.
I'm going to cut you off because you're wasting everyone's time, because I'm looking at the document right now, just so everyone can see that I have already read it, and I'm looking at the document in question. Even if I were to just take this at blank value, say this is correct, this is a real letter, that has not been confirmed to me in any capacity that they are going to remove Chubar on account of his corruptness, and this guy, Koizar, they're going to remove them from positions of power. I could accept that that's possible. So this is the problem of how do you actually establish a standard of evidence. Okay, because I'm going to just please listen to me, like very closely, right? Can you please point out in this document any allusion to the plan to intentionally and methodically starve Ukraine? Go ahead.
I have a more
sure. So this was just a waste of my time then, right?
No. So that one shows that there was a definitely a thing going on with Ukraine, and this is like setting up the whole conflict. And this other document shows that.
What does this show actually? Because we can all read it right now, and I don't think there's anything incriminating about this letter at all. There's nothing criminal about this. These people are corrupt. This person's opportunistic. This person has rotten diplomacy. They have a criminally frivolous attitude to their jobs that's going to ruin Ukraine. So they're not up to leading Ukraine. We should go to the offerings and try to influence it so that, we can ensure a genuinely Bolshevik decision is made and influence it in that way. We will have to remove them both from Ukraine. By what method do we remove them? It's not clear. Maybe you're going to try to argue that this is evidence that they wanted to circumvent the Soviet legal system, although I highly doubt that.
You have to look at all
mean?
These. Let me give you a bit of context here. So these Soviet officers were sending letters to Stalin about the Ukrainian food shortages and like a famine that's going on. And Stalin blatantly rejected to offer any aid to Ukraine.
Okay, where's the evidence for that? Where's the evidence for that?
Okay, well, I have... Yeah,
because here they're describing a criminally frivolous attitude toward their job, which probably...
They're looking at the same document.
Which probably could be related to why there was a famine. Maybe these people were not running things correctly. Maybe that had something to do with the mismanagement of the process of industrialization and of collectivization in Ukraine. Maybe that was tangentially related to the famine. Have you ever thought of that?
The man was removed from power. Stalin called him corrupt. When the letter, when he said,
where does this evince a denial? First of all, objectively speaking, they sent aid. They tried to relieve the famine as soon as they became aware of it. That's an objective fact.
This document proves Stalin wanted to improve conditions in Ukraine.
Thank you so much, Goliath.
What? What do you mean they relieve the famine as soon as they got?
They did everything in their power to relieve the famine as soon as they became aware of it.
That's blatantly not true.
Okay.
Because it's blatantly shown specifically from these letters that they were aware of the famines, yet Stalin rejected to offer.
Give me one shred of evidence that these letters evince the fact that they are A, both aware of the famines, and crucially B, that they refuse to send aid in light of that awareness.
are back and forth between Stalin and this Soviet officer. It says stuff. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it says stuff like
I'm going to read it right now. Okay, and bring me Stalin's response.
Okay, Stalin's response would be, okay, I think this is it.
Okay, this is not Stalin's response. This is a guy named Chubar.
It says and Stalin.
No, it's a letter from him to Molotov and Stalin.
Okay, wait. Yeah, so I think the first one was the response actually that I sent to the second letter.
Okay, do you have clinical schizophrenia or something? This one is a letter from Petrovsky to Molotov and Stalin. This
and then the first one
from Chubar to Molotov and Stalin.
No. Okay. Look. So the second one I sent, the letter from Petrovsky to Molotov and Stalin. Then the response to that is the first one I sent, called the letter to Stalin to Molotov. But so I already read the first one.
Given the most serious attention to Ukraine, Chubar's corrupt and Koizer's bad diplomacy, and he has a criminally frivolous attitude toward his job. Now, how is that in any way an indication that they're refusing aid?
He was talking about the first letter to giving aid to Ukraine, and Stalin called these people criminal.
Petrovsky's not mentioned in this article.
Did you read the second one the first one, the one that was sent to him?
Petrovsky is not in this letter.
It clear. Okay,
This is Petrovsky who's explaining that people are starving. Supposedly, I have not confirmed the veracity of any of this, but this is Petrovsky.
Yeah,
this first one is not a response to Petrovsky because Petrovsky is not mentioned in it. Only Chubar is mentioned in it, and Chubar is here. But the idea that Chubar is allegedly corrupt because he's claiming that the plan is not working has yet to be demonstrated. Could there have possibly been other reasons why Molotov is referring to him as corrupt? Or there's no possibility that he could have been corrupt for another reason? It has to be because he was reporting on the situation in Ukraine. Logically speaking, what you're saying is nonsense.
So this was a policy, right? From the Soviet Union. Make all property belong to collective farms and cooperatives. Harvest in the fields, public reserves, livestock, cooperative stock, and stores, etc. Equivalent to state property, and fully strengthen the protection of this property against theft. Use judicial repressions of the highest degree as measures of social protection against theft of the collective.
I'll listen. What I want you to do
wait, hold up.
How are you going to rationally explain how the whatever it is, even the 10 whatever bushels policy, you can't steal grain. Explain to me. No. I want you just to rationally make the argument that policy means they were trying to intentionally starve Ukrainians rather than the opposite, which is secure the security of food supplies so that everyone could be properly fed.
As soon as they collectivized the farms, right? Then suddenly famine happened, which was like as soon as they made it equivalent to state property, the socialist market equivalent to state property. Suddenly,
you're making a different argument. You're making a different fucking argument now. Now, I am willing to get into the details of the relationship between the collectivization and the famine. I can get into that nitty-gritty with you. But there's one little problem we still have to resolve because you have just leveled a disgusting form of slander and defamation against the Soviet state, which is that they intentionally tried to starve the Ukrainians. The only fruit of the argument that you're making right now that I could possibly draw is that this is your view. This is the only thing in your argument that I'm hearing, is that you think that collectivization caused the famine, which I think it did partially cause the famine, actually. But you're trying to say, I guess you're trying to now make the argument that this proves the superiority of market systems. I don't give a fuck if you prefer market systems over the collectivization system. But the claim that the Soviets methodically engineered this famine to starve Ukrainians is patently false, and you have yet to justify it with a single piece of evidence, not a shred of evidence.
Let me make the argument here. Okay, so because of the collectivization was put under state control, right? They had the authority to take as much resources from these places as they wanted because they were state property. because they had that ability to take resources, and there was clearly a situation in Ukraine where Ukrainians weren't very happy with the situation and very happy with the Red Army still. So what they did was they took the resources from these farms purposefully to cause a shortage, to make the people weak there and more reliant on the state welfare for their survival.
Okay, well, thank you for wasting my time with a bunch of jibber jabber. Where's the argument?
That's the argument.
Something about the state taking all the resources. Where is the intentional famine? Where?
That is an intentional famine. If they take food, then
no, they don't. If they requisition too much grain on accident because they miscalculated and mismanaged the situation on the ground, that does not fucking mean they intentionally tried to starve Ukrainians. It means they fucked up.
Why do you think it's an accident?
Because
why do you think
it's March 16th, 1932, from the archive of the President of the Russian Federation, the Political Bureau believes that shortage of seed grain in Ukraine is many times worse than what was described in Comrade Koizer's telegram, the guy who, by the way, they said was opportunistic and they wanted to sack. Therefore, the Political Bureau recommends the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Ukraine take all measures within its reach to prevent the threat of failing to sow in Ukraine. That was in March. You gave me shit from June 10th, and then the response from Molotov, supposedly, which was a response that he sent to Stalin, was July 2nd. So the Soviet state, even as early as March 16th, was warning the Communist Party of Ukraine, the Central Committee, to take action because they were over-reporting the amount of seed grain they had. There was a shortage that the nationalist-inclined leaders like Koizer, who you're saying are martyrs, that were we just told the truth and that's why Stalin hates us. No, you lied. You said you had more seeds than you had when you didn't, because you fucked up either as an act of incompetence, over-enthusiasm, or corruption, which is what Molotov accused Chubov of.
So but that's the thing. It was in March, so that means they failed to actually follow through, right?
That was the job of the Communist Party of Ukraine, and they did fail.
Quote unquote prevent the failing, to prevent the threat.
Yeah, they failed, but they had the intention to prevent it. There's no evidence.
Do you have any evidence that they tried to prevent it? That they did anything to try?
I don't even have to get that right now. I probably could if I wanted and put the time in it, but right now I have a glaring piece of evidence that there was already an intention, there was a command by the Political Bureau to the Communist Party of Ukraine to do that. And if they didn't do that, that means they were violating the order that was given to them by the Political Bureau of the central authorities of the Soviet Union. You can't explain why there was also a famine in Russia. You can't explain why there was also a Kazakh famine, which I believe took more casualties. You can't explain these things. You can't explain why it would be in the interest of the Soviet state to cause such a chaotic and uncontrollable circumstance that is a famine. It's chaos. If the Soviet state is a totalitarian, all-controlling state, why would they want to induce a famine? If they wanted to kill Ukrainians,
for control.
If they wanted to kill Ukrainians, a famine would not be the optimal means to do that.
You need to understand that all these laws and legislation are just letters to Santa without the people to enforce them.
Okay,
they don't mean anything.
I don't even have to entertain that argument, and I'm not going to entertain it because you're failing to actually get to the central point, which you have yet to provide a single piece of evidence, just a single one, that shows there was an intentional and methodical plan by the Soviet state to starve Ukrainians. Not a single piece of evidence.
But I'm making the argument. You're just saying I'm not going to, you're avoiding it.
You're not making that argument, and if you are trying to make that argument, you're not establishing the connection between a supposed shortage of people or lack of willingness on part of the Communist Party of Ukraine to fulfill the orders of the Political Bureau and an intention by that very same Political Bureau to starve Ukrainians. There's no connection between those. There's none. If you want to make the argument that there's a connection, go ahead and make it.
Wait, hold on. It's not about the willingness. I'm talking about you can't just say go kill the like Ukrainians, right? That doesn't
Why not?
especially because there was a lot of like actual like Ukrainian people in the Red Army. That was a thing. If you're going to tell an army, which people, a lot of Russians, like Russian people, held Ukrainians to be their brothers. If you're gonna tell those people to then go slaughter civilians, they're not gonna do it. So it's a matter of trying to covert.
So okay, did the Holocaust happen? Because I don't know, you seem like a Nazi banderist apologist, so I just want to confirm.
Wait, hold up.
Happened.
Where'd you even get that? You just
I just want to ask you: did the Holocaust happen?
Yes.
Okay. Did everyone know it was happening at the time?
No.
Okay. So wouldn't it have been possible for the Soviet state to disproportionately target Ukrainians in a more covert way? Because here's the idiotic logic. Supposedly, the totalitarian Soviet state was starving Ukrainians and keeping it a secret from all of the Russians, and they didn't know about it. So if the Soviets decided to exterminate Ukrainians outright, they wouldn't be able to contain that secret. Everyone would have found out.
Yeah,
How does that make sense?
Okay, you just mentioned the Holocaust. Not everyone knew about the Holocaust. They had to do it in a covert manner. And so the Soviets couldn't just order people to go kill civilians. That's absurd.
No, but they could have rounded them up.
That would still be like pretty blatant, especially if you have like you're gonna have to take away from like official party resources, like the people who are most loyal, to go execute these people.
So you're saying there was a conspiratorial intention to starve Ukrainians that none of the rank and file functionaries knew about. Who knew about it exactly then?
Stalin himself and the higher ups and
Stalin and Molotov and the political bureau and the political central committee of the Communist Party of the Soviet Union. Did Chubov know about it? Did Koizer know about it?
I don't exactly know.
Did the leaders of the Communist Party of Ukraine know about it?
Probably not.
Wait a second. I just have to inquire about a little contradiction here, if you will. Earlier, I showed you documented evidence of the political bureau giving an order to the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Ukraine to take all measures within its reach to prevent the threat of a to prevent the threat of a famine. And you claimed that the inaction on part of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of Ukraine reflected...
They might have known. Then they might have known. I don't know necessarily.
Wait. They might have known to probably not. Why? Before I raise that logical contradiction to you.
Okay, because again, like I don't know about that specifically.
But
like,
you knew about it 2 minutes ago before I brought up this glaring logical contradiction in your argument, and now
glaring logical contradiction.
Now all of a sudden, the likelihood of the Central Committee of the Communist Party knowing about this conspiratorial plan goes from not likely to it's now likely. How does that make sense?
What do you mean? How does that make sense? Like I don't know about that. Like,
okay, so let's assume that they were also complicit in it. The Central Committee of the Communist Party of Ukraine is complicit in the conspiracy. But you also just linked me evidence, and here are the two pieces of evidence, of people from that same Central Committee, or from the Communist Party of Ukraine, sending letters to Molotov and Stalin describing the situation on the ground, and then you claim that Stalin and Molotov refused to offer relief. Why are people who, in your own words, are probably complicit in this conspiracy, sending letters to Molotov and Stalin for relief when they themselves were the perpetrators of the conspiracy? Did they have a sudden change of heart? Did they decide to suddenly...
So why? So the issue to help in Ukraine was issued in March, yet the letters were sent in June, right?
In March, this political bureau of the Soviet Central Authorities sent it to the Ukrainian communists.
Yes,
in June,
and that was in March. Yet the famine still continued, and there was a major situation.
The famine had not started by then. You're getting your timelines completely wrong.
So there's a shortage. So you're saying a famine didn't start, but there was a shortage of seed in March.
Yes, because in order for there to be a famine, there has to be an extremely low yield from those seeds, which results in a shortage of food because people don't eat seeds, they eat food.
So there was a shortage of seeds. They sent a letter and were like, uh-oh, there's no food. Sent that to Stalin. And Stalin replied with, this guy's corrupt, you know.
No, he didn't reply with that. He didn't reply with that. There's no evidence that this letter from Stalin to Molotov and Kaganovich was in any capacity a response to these letters from June. There's no evidence of that.
What? It literally is writing to...
Okay. So in this letter, if Stalin would have told Molotov and Kaganovich, hey, these guys just told me a famine's going on, that means they're corrupt and I want you to remove them, you would have been right. Not once does he even allude to the idea that his decision that these people are corrupt, opportunistic, and rotten diplomatically is related to their report of a famine on the ground. And actually, it doesn't square up with what you're saying. How can these people be Stalin's victims for asking for relief when, in your own words, it is logically likely that they were themselves part of in the know about the conspiracy to kill the Ukrainians?
Didn't. Okay, wait, hold on. I pulled back on that because I don't know like that specific like history.
No. Then I want to actually confront you the logic here because.
Well, I didn't make it as like
wait. But no. You have to though.
Why was I'm saying it's possible that the Ukrainian Communist Party didn't know.
I don't want you to give me stuff about possibilities. I demand from you that you respond to this piece of evidence. I demand from you that you respond to this piece of evidence.
You want me to take a stance on this specific thing?
Yes, the Political Bureau believes the shortage of seed in Ukraine is worse than what was described in Koizer, the guy they later decided they wanted to purge, telegram. Therefore, they recommend the Communist Party of Ukraine takes all measures to prevent the threat of failing to sow crops in Ukraine. I want you to explain why that order was given to the Communist Party of Ukraine.
If the Central Communist Party had the plan of intentionally starving Ukrainians in a genocide, then what would it look like if they never gave any kind of orders to the Ukrainian Communist Party to help, right? But this
wasn't the Ukrainian Communist Party reporting to them that there's a famine.
No.
Somehow, the Central Committee, the Political Bureau, knows about that there's a shortage of seed grain before there's an awareness of any of the things going on the ground.
Oh, that's strange. Because that's strange. Why does the Politburo, why do they know about a shortage of seeds before the Ukrainians?
Because they're able to parse out inconsistencies in the report of how much grain there is, comparing that to facts verified by people on the ground that they trust. That's why.
What report?
Because Comrade Koizer is what he's being called, reports to the central authorities that there's a larger amount of seed grain than there is. The central authorities find that to be inconsistent with other facts and evidence gathered on the ground. So they tell the Communist Party of Ukraine...
But you're making the claim that the Ukrainian Communist Party don't know about a shortage of seed, which is something they should be overlooking anyway because of the prior collectivization of their industry.
For political purposes, it is very possible that they over-reported the amount of seed grain.
Why would they do that?
For political careerism, because they were corrupt.
What do you mean for political careerism? How would reporting...
Because it makes them seem more competent and successful in actually getting bigger agricultural yields. There was a political incentive for them to over-report the yields because it would have bolstered their fucking careers.
Is this,
No, this is a widely known fact, even according to your bourgeois historians on Soviet history. They had a political... It's a widely used argument, by the way.
You mean bourgeois historians? What are you talking about?
Okay, Angloid historians, lying piece of shit historians even agree with what I'm saying.
So, okay, can you name a few historians that deny the Holodomor?
Grover Furr, Stephen Kotkin is a reputable historian. The whole revisionist school, Sheila Fitzpatrick, J. Arch Getty, all of those people.
Okay.
They do not believe there was an intentional famine. The idea that it is a well-established fact that the Soviets had an intentional genocide against Ukraine is a myth. It's not even the prevailing view in Western scholarship. It is only
Are you sure?
Yeah.
Are you sure it's not a prevailing
No, it's
view?
exclusively the Ukrainian emigre lobby and the Ukrainian institutions and Ukraine's international policy to push this line. But outside of that influence, it is not a well-established fact.
This is literally equivalent. This is literally equivalent to saying, like, the Holocaust didn't happen.
No, it's not. By the way, where did the name come from, Holodomor? But the claim that it was intentionally a name that was made
even far
as to make it seem like this is the Soviet version of a Holocaust. There are established organizations that deny this, that are ruling organizations, precisely because of the equivalence being drawn with the Holocaust. No one denies there was a famine, but the claim that there was an intentional policy of killing Ukrainians and exterminating them through famine is not well established. And yes, I have seen organizations you would probably have to find reputable that also denied that that was the case.
But this is the common view in academia that it happened.
Well, how do you define common? Because Stephen Kotkin doesn't accept that view.
Okay, Stephen Kotkin?
Yeah. So there's a whole Wikipedia article, okay? And oh my God, why does Wikipedia have a Holodomor genocide question? Because apparently it is subject to some kind of dispute. Historian J. Arch Getty states that the scholarly consensus of classifying the Holodomor as a result of bungling and rigidity rather than a genocidal plan.
Okay, wait, let me read this. So, the Soviet head of state, Mikhail, fucking say that name, responded to Western offers of food by telling of political chiefs who offer the help of the starving Ukraine, and commented, only on the most decadent of classless are capable of producing such cynical elements. And I've a source for this. He said that.
Give me the source, and let's see what it was actually said, because I couldn't hear what you said. Hold on, look at this. Look at this. The story which has emerged in this book is of Soviet leadership which was struggling with a famine crisis, which had been caused partly by their wrong-headed policies, but it was unexpected and undesirable. The book claims Stalin is responsible, but they say it was not intentional. No reputable source today claims it was intentional. Even Robert Conquest has gone back on his original claims of Soviet intentionality in the famine.
So why was it recorded, right? When they counted the corpses, they reported 3,997 when the actual number was 9,472 for the
you just
medical...
said a bunch of jibber jabber. What corpses? Where? Who? What? Well, they left. I'll wait them to reconnect. I bet their internet probably disconnected. We'll give them some time to come back. So Stephen Kotkin was the person I was referencing. Said Stalin was responsible. There's no evidence for Stalin's intention to kill Ukrainians deliberately. It was not an intentional murder. Government recognition of it being a genocide. The international community, again, wow. It's the international community. Wow, the international community recognizes it was a genocide. I guess it's over. I guess all of these Ooga Booga people, in her words, aren't willing to recognize it. But all of these great, nice people are willing to recognize it because they're civilized and they're human. What a fucking joke. Did they get banned? Because I'm looking at the mod chat and they said they were going to get banned after the debate. They're not banned yet, according to the mods. They said, I'll see if I can join another time. That's what they're claiming. They said Hitler was a great man.